I just wanted to give you a little bit of a heads up on some of the things that I wrote down as I was reading chapter 3. Definitely not all of my notes by any means. I'll let you be smart enough to come up with your own, but I thought I'd give you a couple of hints as to the things that I thought were important as I read chapter 3. Right off the bat, you see a lot of pretty extravagant, just over-the-top things that people are either assuming are true or know to be true about Gatsby's party and the setup. They know that the Rolls-Royce car has been bussing people in, so they know that that extravagance is happening. They know that 5 crates of oranges and lemons are delivered every Friday, and every Monday the same oranges and lemons left the back door in a pyramid made of pulp halves. So they know that there's a ton of fruit going through, which is a very expensive thing to do, especially at this time. And they assume then that there's a machine in the kitchen which can extract the juice of 200 oranges in half an hour if a little button was pressed 200 times by a butler's thumb. So it sounds really funny to me, and I actually laughed when I first read that, but then I had to step back and say, well, how does he know? Nobody's really ever been inside. It's kind of like Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. You assume that this is how it's going to be because that you can see the beginning of it and you can see the result of it, but you don't know for sure. So maybe a little bit of exaggeration there, we're not really sure. One of the things that I wrote down is that the decor for the party, it talks about how it's gaudy in primary colors. This is one thing that I thought was an intriguing symbol because primary colors, when they're used in literature, are almost always used to represent childishness. Those bright yellows and bright reds and bright blues, they're very elementary colors. They're not mixed. They're not very complex. So because they're not terribly complex as colors, they're usually used to represent childhood. Anytime, even in film, actually, anytime you see bright yellows, bright reds, bright blues, that's representing childhood. So the party itself is being set up to be a very childish kind of affair, and I think that you would agree that it definitely was. Another thing that I noticed is that the light, it talks about, it grows brighter as the earth lurches away from the sun. So they're relying on a kind of unnatural light, as opposed to the normal, like, pleasant light of sunlight and the natural light in that way. They're relying on man-created light to make that happen. Lots of electricity and such. I think that's definitely representative of the 20s, at least for me, looking at that and going, yeah, they weren't really relying on nature. They were relying on their own, whatever money could buy, which is very arrogant in some ways. So as the people come in, it talks about how Nick is one of the few guests who's actually been invited, but people still come anyway, which I think speaks to Gatsby's just kind of lack of, in some ways, lack of social prowess, but also his just general, just, again, that idea of just anybody can come, I don't really care, I just want people here because it makes me look good, perhaps, or maybe he just really doesn't care, he just likes to watch people, which is what he seems to a lot of the party. So lots of people there. Nick's one of the only ones who's invited, which is intriguing. Let's see, one of the things that I thought was kind of funny is the Owl Eyes man in the book, or in the library, who's impressed by the fact that there are real books in the library. I'm not really sure why that would be surprising to somebody, but I guess they assume that Gatsby's fake. To me, I see that as potentially representing the fact that Gatsby is, they see him as this man who's just the facade, but he actually has some depth, and you get to know that a little bit more as Nick gets to know the real Gatsby. You start to see he actually does have lots and lots of different layers as a character. He's not just this facade like most of the other people are, just these fake book covers that look like books but aren't really. Lots of rumors that go around about Gatsby, which means you really have to be very careful about what you see. Quickly, Jordan Baker is a very intriguing character as well. She's very contradictory, which means she and Nick are perfect for each other because he's kind of contradictory too. She talks about how she likes large parties because they're so intimate, which doesn't make any sense to me at all, but I don't really go to a lot of parties, so maybe that's something you understand that I don't. Let's see, as the party starts to break down, you see a lot of people crying and singing and weeping and whatever else. There's one phrase that I thought was interesting after the car goes into the ditch, where Nick says that there seems to be a pleasant significance in having been the last to go, as if he had desired it all the time. So there's this kind of puppet master part of Gatsby, which I think works really well with the title, because the title makes him sound like a magician. So there's this kind of hope in Nick as he writes about Gatsby, that Gatsby's really just this that he's totally in control of everything, that he's very suave, and he's aware of what's going on and the effect that he's having on people, and when really we have to wait till the end of the book to find out whether or not that's actually true, whether or not Gatsby actually is in control. I think that's about it. There were two things there was two more, that's right. At the very end of the party, we see Gatsby in complete isolation, by himself as he's waving to everybody else. Very important image for Gatsby. Most of the times when Gatsby is standing by himself, he's probably stuck back in the world that he wishes he could get back to, that you'll read a little bit more about in the next couple of chapters. And then as we move on from the party, one thing that I thought was particularly intriguing and kind of weird about Nick is that he acknowledges that Jordan Baker instinctively avoids clever men, and because she feels safer that way. And so I just kind of wonder, what does that say about Nick? he's with this girl that he recognizes likes to be with stupid guys. So I don't know, take what you will about Nick. He says that he is one of the most honest people he's ever known. So we'll see if that's true. So there's the third chapter of Gatsby. Lots of kind of crazy, silly things that happen, but very representative of the era, and a very good setup as we dive into the bulk of what Gatsby needs in terms of actual plot and progression. So take the symbolism from this chapter, don't forget it, and I will see you after you've read chapter 4.